Day 9, we talked about a lot today, predominantly about weight management, how diabetes works, how inflammation of cells work, how nutrition works in relation to weight maintenance, what are some considerations when losing weight, when gaining weight, what is healthy, what is not healthy, and also, of course, some behavioral intervention, which led to a lot of interesting discussion. But this was probably one of the better sessions of the week, I would say. Not that the other sessions weren't good, but the level of engagement for me, it was a good session for the week. I was really on for this topic and I really noticed it. So it's very much aligned with what I find interesting. So a couple of things that, and I have my notes here because I found it so interesting that I took a lot of notes that I just want to share a couple of things that are top of mind at the end of the day with this. So, for example, there's a bandwidth of the glucose that we have in blood. And when glucose goes up, insulin goes up. And then there was a whole kind of like biochemistry session, I'd almost say, about what happens when you become insulin resistant and what the causes of that are and the implications for that on helping people who want to change um, um, that condition when it comes to having a useful conversation about the relevance of diet and the physical realities of diabetes type 2 in that case. And that was super interesting. Now, not that I'm a doctor or a specialist, but it cast a very interesting light on what stupid advice would be because it's something that I've heard on the internet versus what the reality actually is and how you can maybe really have a conversation with someone that's helpful. We talked about the sensors in your body and how feelings are constructed. So moving on from the previous discussion, basically saying, that if you instruct someone about something, they might feel a certain way about it. And we went to that conversation because someone asked, in light of the conversation about glucose and insulin, how to have a conversation about the insulin measuring patch, for example, that people are the quantified human, and how to have a conversation about what you can and cannot learn from the data that you're getting from there. That was super interesting. I also didn't know that the body actually creates glucose on an ongoing basis and also breaks it down at the same time. I'm not going to get into the chemistry of it because I don't feel I'm well versed enough at the moment to tell it, but at one point I hopefully will be, because it seems like an integral part of a conversation that I would need to have. What I did not know is that when you have too much glucose in your blood, you start to excrete it in different ways. And one of those ways is by going to the bathroom very often. And there's a relationship between that and weight gain if you stop excreting that amount of glucose, because those are calories in the end, and you're consuming those. That excess of glucose comes from somewhere. So all of this kind of kept coming back to the idea that, energy balance, however you attain it, it's not for discussion, but the energy balance is one of the key starting points to living a healthier life. And if weight management, weight maintenance, either up or down or constant is a goal, then there is one way that energy comes in. There are many ways that energy goes out, but it's far more impactful to manage the energy in component, which is why we are having this whole conversation in light of food and feeding. We talked about keto and how that comes back to energy in, energy out, and how that leads to quick weight loss, but also how that might lead to satiety. And then we talked about an interesting concept that I also studied last night in a video, which really captured my imagination, because it's very relatable and very understandable, when you've done a weight loss journey, was the fat overshoot, where the yo-yo effect is maybe what we call it more colloquially, is where I weigh 100 kilos, I go down to 90, and then for some reason my body doesn't just gain those 10 kilos back over time, over 1 or 2 years, but I actually end up being heavier. And that's a risk of dieting and weight loss, apparently, which I wasn't consciously aware of. And apparently the way it's explained is that your body tries to reset to your the fat-free mass, so muscle, bone density, etc., from the original weight. But a byproduct of that is that it's easier to add on fat than it is muscle, because it takes time to build and create muscle for different reasons. That you, before you recapture that fat-free mass that you also lose when you lose weight, you gain an excess amount of fat mass back. And how do you manage that, right? So there are different ideas about that. Obviously, earlier on we spoke about, well, isn't it maybe being healthy isn't about fat loss, but it is about, or weight loss, it is about weight management or weight maintenance, which I think is an interesting principle to bring in this conversation. But also the insight that you might be able to work on that fat-free mass or muscle mass specifically by eating more proteins and then engaging in a strength training program, a muscle building program. And there are some theories about maybe there's a reset point after 12 months where your body accepts the current state of your fat-free mass as kind of like a new set point, which means that can vary over time. So there were some different insights there. We talked about homeostasis and what that means and how that gets disrupted. And then we started to talk a lot more about food. And one of the things we touched upon was ultra-processed foods and what ultra-processed foods, why they're so easy to consume. And it's very funny. Maybe it's not that the companies want us to eat a lot, which is maybe a controversial thing to say given all of the books that have been published recently also about ultra-processed food, but that they are very low in protein, which means the satiation level is low, and you can eat a lot of them before you get the I am satiated or sated signal, which takes about 20 minutes. So you consume a lot more calories before you stop eating them, which was an interesting insight. So then how do you factor all of these kind of insights and understandings into a conversation where the goal might be changing eating habits, not per se weight loss, not per se weight gain, not per se weight management, but just different eating habits? What does that mean for the conversation we're having about change, and how do we bring that together in kind of like a wish with clear results, understanding the obstacles and the plan, and how do we kind of guide someone through that process? So it was a lot. It's also, I think, one of the longest videos that I've made this week, but a good session. I'm happy I was here today and look forward to the last day tomorrow.